Thanks for having me, Dr. Goli. The directors who make up the Takatso Consortium, at the moment, we've put together an SPV, of which it was myself, representing the Herod side of the consortium, and Gideon Novick, representing the global airways side of the consortium. I think at a later stage, the entity will be populated with more directors, but the idea is that the consortium is a special purpose vehicle put together to pursue this SAA, opportunity.
Yeah. You mentioned Gideon Novick, who is the other director. My understanding is that he's also involved in a newly established airline. It's called Lift. Won't that expose SAA's strategy to competitors?
I don't think so, Dr. Goli. At the moment, we have, we both sort of as a grouping raised our, our hands at this opportunity to get involved in it and bring some of our sort of capabilities and capacity to this platform, which we, for both our respective sort of as believe that it's a worthwhile, endeavor for our, respective sort of platforms. Lyft was started, during this pandemic, so therefore it is, it was started despite the issue of the other players in the market, despite the issue of SAA being in business rescue, besides all the other, challenges. And then they believed that there was an opportunity there. We have also been looking at the sector for a while, and we believe that there's an opportunity within the sector to link in with some of the other assets that we have within our portfolio. So therefore, I don't believe it will have that challenge. And as you can also imagine, it's a relatively very new entrance into the marketplace. I think currently with the market share for about maybe in between 10 or 12%, something in that region. And you also have an SAA, which is currently not, flying. So therefore, from a market point of view, the capacity is still there to do that. And I think post this period, we will then evaluate how the two sort of brands come together, or what is most optimal under the conditions as we go forward.
All right, Mr. Mahloele, I'm just going to ask you to pace it up for me in terms of the responses because of the time against us. So there's lots I want to talk to you about. First and foremost, are you able to tell us if you are funded, and if so, who are your funders as a consortium?
That, we have been as a fund around for in excess of 15 years. We've funded structures and projects some way, bigger than perhaps what this opportunity is. If you look at the 320 megawatt, wind power project in that we put together in Kenya, that was in excess of 800 million euros as a total project. If you look at some of the power projects we've put in Nigeria, over $1 billion for a 420 megawatt project there. So therefore, there's sort of much bigger other stuff we've done. We have a portfolio of assets in excess over $1 billion that we have involved in over the years. And we have other associations in which then we tend to draw upon with regards to our capital formations doing that. So the capital capacity has always been there. We've done stuff all these years. We've recently, I think, in December, closed a border post, side of Beat Bridge on the Zimbabwean side. So we have constantly been at this for a while. That it goes.
All right. So there are no specific private owners, or rather private funders. You're basically doing this yourselves as Tshepo Mahloele and Gideon Novick.
This is, it's not Tshepo Mahloele and that. I wish it was just my own personal balance, but that's not the situation. We're using the balance sheets of our respective sort of companies that we are involved with, and those are the ones that, will be participating in the opportunity. We can imagine that perhaps down the line there might be a need for other capital providers to this, in terms of like whether it's debt or whether it's other mass funding or other type of capital provision. So down the line, we might envisage that being a possibility. But for now, it's a consortium that has been put together on the back of the two entities.
All right. Tell us about Takatso's track record in the airline industry. Does this consortium have a specific track record as a company, or are you relying on the director's exposure to the airline industry? Giro Novic is an obvious one, given his track record in this industry. Your involvement with Lanseria Airport, is that basically the sum total of the experience here?
I think if you put that experience together, what we've been able to do, if you put together what Global Airways and Gideon Novic have done in the past more than 30 years of being exposed to the aviation industry, I think it's something to be commended that the two platforms have put their hands up in terms of now considering a different platform upon which to take this opportunity. Takatso is a new consortium put together for this opportunity. As you know, that's the way all these things are structured. You bring partnerships to get together to pursue an opportunity based on their respective contributions to that endeavor.
All right.
And that's what it's all about. And Global has been in this game for more than 20 years, if you look at what they've been able to do. They've also even operated for some of the European airlines in the past. So it's a group of individuals who are bringing together sufficient capacity to be able to take on this opportunity. And also, if you look at the other, what makes up the other opportunities or players in the market, I think we could all have said, maybe we must perhaps not even also as a people or as South Africans doubt our capacity to put together these opportunities and take them on. If you consider the other local players are and the capacity that they've put together, and what also the market has done in terms of pricing entry. So we believe that there's sufficient capabilities within South Africa or by a South African entity to take on this.
Minister Gordhan mentioning on Friday that this is not a done deal yet between Takatso and government, given that there's still going to be due diligence that's going to be done. How confident are you that the deal will succeed?
Totally, we are very confident in terms of our desire to take on this opportunity as the consortium. Nobody asked us to put our hands up when the opportunity was there, and all sorts of people expressed an interest in those assets when they were under business rescue, and then one of the big banks in the country was looking at all sorts of expressions of interest for this asset. We were one of those who did that. And in addition to that, not only that, even the other assets which were out there, hands have been put up to go for that opportunity. And that's the way it came across.
Okay. So it sounds as though you are confident enough. So as a prospective majority shareholder of the SAA airline, do you as a consortium have sufficient capital to see this deal through?
We thoroughly believe we have that capacity to do that, Colin. And as I've mentioned, if you look at the track record of both entities, the type of assets that have been put together. When we started, many years ago, and if you consider some of the stuff you've done, it's a bit sad that we have a bit of a challenge, I think, again, as a people, to believe that we can take on these things.
Yeah. Can I just interrupt you quickly?
So there is the capacity to do that.
You talk about assets combined. Yes. Are you able to tell us what you are worth as a consortium, having combined your assets, therefore?
I think, Global Airways can like speak on their behalf into like, their assets that they have.
Mm-hmm.
We have assets, that we've invested in like, over the years in excess of like, $1 billion. If you combine the value of some of those assets in terms of like their growth over the past 15 years and like, what that $1 billion has been able to unlock in a sense of like $3-4 billion of assets across the continent. And also if you look at like, some of our other structures and assets that we've put together, well, I think it should be easy to comprehend that like, we have put even much more difficult structures together than this one.
Okay.
Say that this one is one of a national interest and asset that's like, an iconic national brand that we believe that like, we can come to the party, to participate along government to resuscitate and like, position again as the leading brand that it should be.
Yeah. A lot of people, Mr. Mahloele, they're obviously going to scrutinize this deal, and I believe that has already started, and this is the hard part that I've got to do with you.
Okay.
Because the question is, with the findings of the PIC, which investigated the governance issues at that entity, there was a specific issue around the fund management that you ran at the time, Harith General Partners, right? You were mentioned in the PIC report as having, quote unquote, reaped rich rewards from a government vision funded by the very same government employees, their pension funds. Now, let me simplify my question to you. How do you respond to critics who will say that where money is involved, ethics are thrown out the window where Tshepo Mahloele is concerned?
That would be a very sort of like sad conclusion to make as far as I'm concerned, Koli, because I think that was a very unfortunate statement, to be made by the writers of that report in that commission. And as you know, they suggested that a further sort of like, investigation be checked into whether like, were the fees which were charged appropriate or not, because that's what it boils down to. Where appropriate, like, fee structures put in place to manage that. And, besides what is being done by the commission, besides that, like, even as a board of Harith, we instituted an independent forensic sort of like, report by independent accountants to check whether were our practices and were our fees in line with industry standards, which they found them to be, and, which I think is now the PIC is being seized with. It was also an independent investigation done by an industry body called South African Venture Capital Association, which found that the fees which were charged by Harith since its inception was ones which were like on an arm's length basis, were ones which were like, are standard in the private equity sector. So therefore, we found the statements made in that report very unfortunate.
Did you challenge the report, or do you still intend challenging the report?
Pardon?
Did you challenge the PIC report, or do you still intend challenging the report? Because clearly you have a fundamental problem with the findings.
Yes, but we didn't. We chose not to like challenge it in court, and we chose to like go with the route they suggested of saying let's have an independent sort of like check of where these fees in line or not. And we have collaborated with that from the beginning. From we've been trying to engage with them since January 2020 to say we are ready to sort of like and open up our books, and which we've said with even commission and independent investigation done by one of the most senior counsel in this country and an independent accounting firm. And we were very satisfied with what has been done. And even, as I said, Goli, SAFCA itself found nothing untoward about the fee structures that Herod has employed since its inception.
All right.
And we tried to sort of like, even, it's very sad, because even from a media point of view, Goli, when, these allegations were initially made, only one publication, journalist, took up our offer to engage with us and go through our documentation and how we were struck together and how these structures work. They were all found to be in order. We have not found any of these publications prepared to come and sit down with us and say, here's our books, here's what we've been doing, here's our assets. Because there was even comments made as if where are these assets? Which is so sad in effect.
Okay. Final point or final question to you, Mr. Mahloele. The other discomfort, some people are going to say, is that the very minister that has come out to make this announcement was the same minister in his capacity as finance minister then, who rubber-stamped some of the decisions relating to the existence of Herith in its various forms at the time. How do you respond to that kind of criticism?
But I'm trying to understand, when you say rubber-stamped some of these things, the way Herith was formed and its whole genesis has been a matter of public sort of record since this whole thing started. The way we were started, we have in our shareholding private sector sort of entities in the form of, in our initial fund, we had the likes of ABSA and Old Mutual, as also shareholders within the fund management entity. Because some of the funds we manage and which were committed to our funds came from some of these, large institutions. So therefore, when Herith was started, it was always envisaged that it will be a private sector-led and managed institution, because it was managing funds from all those varied private sector, capital providers.
Okay.
So therefore, it was never meant to be a public sector-led or owned institution. PIC was very visionary in saying, let's create a platform which can harness, pension funds to develop Africa's long-term infrastructure needs. We believe that even today, it was still the right decision to do. And it has unlocked all the assets that you now see in our portfolio. And we still intend to do more as we develop Africa's infrastructure for the next many, many years. The demand for this is still very much there. So the way in which it was structured has been above board and transparent from the very word go. There has nothing about it which was hidden or untoward about.
All right. Mr. Mahloele, I really want to thank you for your time, but perhaps as a parting shot, and yes, I am going to be murdered here because I'm over time right now, but how do you respond to those who say you have a very close relationship with Minister Pravin Gordhan? Do you have a relationship with Pravin Gordhan?
To the extent that, let's say, one has been interacting with the department in this transaction, I can say I, know Mr. Pravin Gordhan from that sense. It's not a relationship where you say, we have a personal or business relationship. It's one based on a very professional engagement, based on the work that we've been doing as an infrastructure, provider. It's not one based on any personal undertakings or personal benefit for Mr. Gordhan or for myself. It's more based on the fact of the assets that we are looking at right now, which sit perhaps within his portfolio, and also to the extent that, let's say, at that time, he was the Minister of Finance. It was a structure which was very much driven by the shareholders and the investors, not even driven by government. And the documentation of all those things has been divulged to all and sundry.
Okay.
And has been very transparent from the beginning.
Tshepo Mahloele, let me thank you for your time, sir, that you have afforded us this afternoon. He is the chairman of Takatso Consortium. That's the consortium that is hoping to go into a relationship with government in order to try and revitalize SAA, or let's just say revive it, perhaps, is the more appropriate word.